Hi everyone, welcome to the Gateway CJSR Presidential Roundtable. I'm April Hudson, Gateway News Editor. Co-moderating with me is Michelle Mark. She's the online, she's the online reporter. Petros, Sadiq, Horse with a Gun, you will each be given 1 minute to introduce yourselves. From there, Michelle and I will be asking you some general and specific questions for the first half hour. You will then have a combined time of 10 minutes in which you may ask one opposing candidate one question. To wrap up, we will move into a 10-minute question and answer with the audience. And we're going to begin with Petros. You have 1 minute.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity to be speaking to you guys today. My name is Petros Kuzma, and I'm running for Students' Union President. Now, a lot of people ask me, Petros, why are you running for Students' Union President? You've been around for a little too long. When are you going to graduate? And I tell them it's because I truly believe that I embody two traits that are needed for being a good president. First is having the experience necessary to follow up with past initiatives and finish big projects that we currently have going on. And second is being able to propose some new ambitious ideas so we can continue to better the undergraduate experience here at the U of A. Now, without those two traits, I feel like then you just have an all-right president. But I truly believe that I embody both. You can check more information on votepetros.com. I have my long 31-page platform with 66-plus citations and et cetera there, and you can read more about it. But I'll be glad to speak more about my platform throughout the debate. Thanks a lot, and be sure to vote Petros Kuzma for president. Going for promotion this time. I got to get used to it, so thanks a lot.
Sadiq, you can go next.
Hey everybody, my name's Sadiq Sumar. I'm also running for the position of SU President. Because this is a presidential roundtable, I'm pretty sure that's obvious. I embody three different things that I think is essential in any president. The first one is passion. Being passionate about the student experience, being passionate about student life, but also academia. The second one is relevant experience. I think I've been involved in all different facets of the university, something that I think is unique to myself as a candidate. And so I think that plays well into having a well-rounded president. And the third one is a fresh outlook on things. Fortunately, I haven't been too involved in the SU bureaucracy for too long, which means that I have a fresh outlook on how we can do things and just sort of changing things up and mixing things up a little bit. You can find my platform on my website. That's www.votesadiq.ca. Follow me on Twitter @votesadiq. And as I say with all my speeches, don't forget to vote on March 6th and 7th. Thanks.
Horse with a Gun.
Finally. I just go? Sorry. Is it recording?
Go ahead.
My name is Horse with a Gun. I'm here to represent, for you, the President of the University of Alberta and potentially the universe. My platform goes as follows. It's going to be a great time, I assure you that. It'll be full of horse puns, full of horse glory, and worst of all and best of all, it'll be the safest campus yet. You can find me on the internet, on YouTube, Facebook, and Tumblr. That is all.
Question is addressed to all three of you. You'll have 1.5 minutes to answer it, and I'd like to know what, in your opinion, was the biggest mistake made by the Students' Union this year?
So, what do I think is one of the biggest mistakes that the SU has made this year? I think something that we could have done better this year is in regards to handling the Lister situation. I think we could have done a better job in terms of building consensus with other stakeholders on campus. I think we could have done a better job selling to students and marketing it as well. But again, it's always easier said than done when you're not the person at the face of the campaign, of the whole issue. But that's one of the reasons. That's one of the things that I think we could have done better. It's divided, I think, some individuals, and I think the approach that we could have taken could have been better at times. But if I was president, that's something that I would have liked to change and make it a little bit better. So, but again, it's easier said than done always. So I appreciate that question. Thank you.
Cool. Well, I think the biggest mistake the Students' Union made this year is actually includes the Lister issue, but doesn't just include, like, it's not just the Lister issue. I think the residence issues as a whole, I think, were handled poorly. So the Lister issue, for example, making sure that we kept our good relationships with university administration and staff, I think was something that was handled a little bit poorly. Unfortunately, I also was not the face of that endeavor. I think something else that was handled relatively poorly is the fact that the June 15th incident, really nothing came out of that. The incident I'm referring to is the Hub Mall shooting. I don't think we've made any substantial changes in that area. Something that we've been pushing a little bit on, but the university hasn't really been responding. So that's something I'd also like to work on this year as SU president. Thank you.
I will agree with the candidates about the Lister issue. I don't know much about it, but I also agree. But my main thing that I think was dealt poorly with is the use of paste within our schools. Paste is injustice. Paste is unruly. Paste should not be allowed in this school or university. My parents were killed by paste makers and were not helped by peacemakers. So that is my biggest issue, and I feel that we can eradicate paste with ease and nice flow.
Our next question is for all three candidates. You will have 1 minute to answer. What makes you different from your opponents? Siddiq, we're going to start with you.
I think there's a few things that make me very different from my opponents. The first one is actual residence experience. It's unquestionable. I lived in Lister for 5 years. I worked with the RHA for a year. I've been very involved with the LHSA, and that's something that I don't think either one of the candidates can say. The other thing that I think sets me apart from the candidates is that, like I said earlier, I haven't been involved in council for more than 2 years. I've been involved in council as a councillor and as a vice president. That's it. It's not 5 years of council experience. So I think that sets me apart from the other candidates in terms of I haven't been involved in the bureaucracy of the SU for a significant amount of time. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. So in regards to what makes me different as a candidate, I think it's pretty much the opposite of what Siddiq has said. I think in regards to me not having any residence experience, I actually think that's a benefit, especially in regards to all the Lister issues that we're facing right now. The university, I believe, is tired in seeing folks from Lister, and they use that as an excuse almost, as saying, well, you're only really benefiting your friends. But I think the second they see a non-Listerite caring about these issues, that's a greater student issue, I think that's when the tone changes. The second thing is in regards to experience. Me having a tremendous amount of experience is crucial. It's not a shortfall. And that really helps in terms of trying to change and better Students' Council itself, which is one of my platform points. And the third point is about bringing in new ideas. Despite me being around for a long time, I feel like I'm actually proposing some new, major, and interesting ideas, which is something that I could say is as a result of my tremendous amount of experience on Students' Council, with student groups, with faculty associations, and other ways of getting involved in campus. So I think with all that said and done, I believe that that's what makes me an extremely unique candidate for running for president. Thanks.
I'm going to point out the biggest elephant in the room. I am a horse. I have a horse's heart. I have the brain of a horse, the hair of a horse, the girthiness of a horse, the mind of a horse, the hands of a horse. So it's clear to see why and how I'm different. I can bring many new ideas to the school just because I'm that different. That different. It's also really hot. So.
Alright, I'd like to ask about the issue of gender-neutral washrooms on campus. Would you be able to give me some specifics about your visions for implementing those and some clarity as to whether you'd be expanding those into larger multi-stall washrooms?
Great question. In terms of gender-neutral washrooms, we do have some single-use washrooms on campus currently. They do exist. SafeWalk is currently actually going around campus and figuring out exactly where they are so they can map them out for those students who'd like to use them. In terms of my vision for gender-neutral washrooms, and I should say that they're not just going to be gender-neutral, but I should say that in the term of accessible washrooms, I should say. My vision for gender-neutral washrooms or accessible washrooms is taking the washrooms on the main floor by the Java Jive and turning those into a multi-stall accessible washroom. How do we do that? We make sure that around all the urinals there are stalls, and making sure that the stalls go from the floor to the ceiling so that students or staff or faculty or whoever get the privacy they need to do their business, basically. I've heard a lot of really interesting stories. For example, a pregnant lady, it took her about 40 minutes to use the washroom on the main floor by that Java Jive. It took her 40 minutes because she could not be assisted by her husband, and it took her 40 minutes because she was pregnant and she was in a wheelchair, and the washroom was not accessible, it was not well equipped to handle handicapped individuals. So hopefully that provides a better vision of what I think the washrooms should look like. I don't know if you want to ask a follow-up or if you want to ask another.
That should be good. You're almost out of time. Thank you, Sadiq.
Thanks.
So yeah, I agree too that gender inclusive washrooms are a good idea. Gender inclusive is a lot more preferable of a term apparently. And in terms of my own vision of what I would like to see for gender inclusive washrooms, I personally think that it might be an interesting idea to look at the bathrooms that are closest to the bookstore of actually making that. Since it has that single wall dividing it, it would be easier to knock it down and actually have individual stalls being installed there. That way you can have a larger bathroom, but still have stalls that go from the ceiling, from the floor to the ceiling. But I also think there's another aspect that Sadiq didn't get a chance to mention is also the consultation side of it. Right now, those advocates for gender inclusive washrooms are actually kind of going through a consultation process with other student groups and communities on campus, and I think that's going to play an important role with that being implemented. I think it's one thing to actually install gender inclusive washrooms. It's another thing if you can talk to student leaders on campus and get them on board with this idea as well, so you can change the overall culture on campus with this idea. So that's my 2 cents.
I had no idea this was actually a thing. But it's awesome, because I mean, we all drop turd the same way. We all drop down our pants, one leg at another, and we all drop the turd into the toilet. We all use the same toilets at home. Why can't we share the toilets at school? I mean, we've all been to the Buffet Royale and seen that the men's bathroom is busy, and we've all dropped turd inside a girl's washroom, and vice versa. This is a great idea, and I fully support it.
Here's one more general question to all 3 of you. How specifically are you going to work with the university to address concerns concerning Lister? You have 2 minutes to respond. Okay. So in regards to how I would work with the university to address the ongoing issues in Lister, I think the inherent fact that I actually have never had the opportunity to live there is in itself a strength. And I think the university will appreciate that almost fresh perspective of sorts. The second aspect of it is, again, I haven't been the face of the issue. As Vice President External, that kind of falls outside of my portfolio, unlike the presidential Vice President Student Life portfolio as well, and Vice President Operations Finance somewhat this year. So I feel like that in itself was an incredible strength in terms of trying to see if we can get a fresh face around the table, trying to establish some new trust with the university as well, and trying to see if we can resolve this issue rather than just waiting until we go to courts as well.
I think the other facet of it is trying to see if we can continue to work with the university on other issues in regards to residences. One thing that I've been working a lot this year is trying to eliminate dormitory property taxes. I've actually been working closely with residences and trying to get that accomplished. So I think one of the biggest things is just re-establishing that trust by A, being a fresh face, B, trying to find ways of collaborating with one another, and the third point is trying to form almost an alliance of sorts, trying to see if we can get support from other associations and communities on campus, right? From Greeks to other residences to other major student groups. And I feel like that's a strong point when we have not all of campus divided on this issue as well. So that's my 3 points.
Working with the university on the Lister issue. I think there are a few different things that we can do that Petros, I think, sort of failed to mention. The first one is making sure that the LHSA is involved in every single step of the way. Changes in Lister should involve all the stakeholder groups, should involve the LHSA, should involve the Students' Union, should involve resident services, should involve the university, yes. And so I think the LHSA really needs to be consulted when we're talking about Lister changes. The second thing is making sure that over the course of potential negotiations that could come up before this goes to court, rebuilding those relationships with the university. Rebuilding those relationships so that in the future, if something like this were to occur, it doesn't happen in the same process. Last but not least, making sure that the RHA and the LHSA are both strengthened. Potentially bringing the LHSA back into the RHA, there's been potential talks about that, but making sure that our residents associations are very strong, that's where one of my platform points, empowering student representatives, comes in, making sure that student representatives have the right tools they need, using Discover Governance because yes, it is there, but I don't think it's been utilized nearly as much as it could be. So, yeah.
One follow-up for you, Sadiq.
Sure.
Your second point mentioned rebuilding relationships.
Absolutely.
Do you have any ideas on how you can start doing that?
I think one thing we need to be more cognizant of is the manner in which we're perceived by the university. I think on this issue we've been not only extremely aggressive in the media, but also been extremely aggressive in our individual meetings with university administrators. And I think what we need to do is, over the course of negotiations and over the course of the next year, we need to sit down and have a really frank and serious chat with some of those administrators so we can figure out and we can let them know and educate them about what the Students' Union's role is in all of this. I think oftentimes some people misinterpret what the Students' Union is. Some administrators don't think we represent students, which is a big problem. So we need to make sure that we educate them about what the Students' Union is and what our role is in university governance.
Thank you. Boris?
To be honest, I was not here for the events that happened last year. I was in Costa Rica with my wife, Shanae. I apologize for my ignorance, but I have nothing to say on this article. I apologize sincerely. I am a failure.
All right, this next question is addressed to Petros. Can you please tell me about your reasons for bringing up the idea of a block week? Yeah. Oh yeah, you have 1.5 minutes.
Okay, great, thanks. Yeah, I'm extremely glad that you brought up that issue, actually. I'm a strong believer that, if possible, we should be trying to propose new ideas that better the undergraduate experience. And I truly believe that this is an idea that will truly better the undergraduate experience. Giving students more academic options and flexibility with choosing their courses is always a good thing. And at the University of Calgary, it's been an extremely successful thing, and I feel like U of A students can benefit equally just as much. In the past couple of years, there's been reports of, for instance, the Faculty of Arts and Science only offering somewhat of 60-70% of their course loads, and I feel like with giving students more options to choose courses that they're interested in and more options for them to, let's say, graduate in a faster way or whatever it is that they want to, giving those options and is extremely important for them. It reduces the mental stress. It reduces financial stress as well if they need to be in school for another semester just for one course. And there's a boatload of reasons as to why it's a good idea.
Okay, to your knowledge, are there other universities that have implemented this?
Yes, there has. I mentioned it already. The University of Calgary is one of them. There's also Quest College as well. They actually kind of, in a different model, they do modules as well. And that's part of the reason why I'm bringing this up. I feel like the University of Alberta Students' Union should be doing greater research into this and seeing what are the possibilities, what have other schools done exactly, and what are the routes needed for us to be taken.
Do you think that this is an opportune time to bring up an idea like this when the SU still has to push through Fall Reading Week and this is a potentially big issue that other presidents could be dealing with for quite a while?
I'm glad that you brought that up. And I think now is the time for us to at least start doing some research into it, right? I'm not saying that we need to be advocating for it right away, but I think there's nothing wrong for us to at least start doing some research into it, start seeing if it's a good idea, and start at least planting the seeds of change for future generations now, right? If elected president, Fall Reading Week is going to be a huge thing that I'm going to be focusing a lot of my time on. But I think in the meantime, we could also be employing some of our resources to be doing research into this issue and seeing if it's something that's worthwhile.
Okay, and in your opinion, do you think that these courses would be pedagogically effective? Don't students already have enough of an issue kind of digesting the course content in 13 weeks?
I'm glad that you brought that up. And the reason is because not all courses work in block courses. Now, for instance, at the University of Calgary, what they do is they only offer two kinds of block courses. They offer beginning level courses, normally options, prerequisites, and the other is advanced courses as well. So that gives students who are specializing in a topic to completely immerse themselves in that topic and really be amongst a cohort of students who are passionate about that as well. So, I mean, for some students, yes, it doesn't work out as a learning style as well. It may not work out for them, but for others, they do find that it's an extremely great way of learning a lot of material and for, again, different learning styles. But the whole point of it is just giving students more options, right? It makes the institutions more money, it gives students more options, and it's a win-win scenario for everybody.
This is a general question for all three of you. A lot of your platform points have new initiatives or improving current initiatives that will take up some money. How do you rationalize spending this money in the face of potentially devastating budget cuts from the province? Sadiq, we're going to start with you.
Great question. I think what we really need to look at is, I think student representatives are not only elected based on who they are, but also based on the ideas that they put forward. And I know that some of the ideas that I have put forward will require X number of dollars. The SU executive does have a few funds to use at their discretion, but I think what really rationalizes the best, what's the best rationale behind using this money is getting elected. When students actually stand behind a candidate and say that this is something that they want, that to me is the best rationale for implementing these new ideas or improving these new ideas. So to me that's the best rationale possible.
Petros?
Thanks a lot for the question. Now, just because the provincial government is facing some financial constraints, I don't think that's a good rationale for saying, hey, the Students' Union, maybe we should be cutting back as well. I think, if anything, there's a greater impetus, there's a reason for us to actually be investing in bettering the undergraduate experience here at the University of Alberta. So, especially when you have the government cutting back on, let's say, student temporary employment programs, if you're having the government cut back the number of scholarships and grants and not providing anymore, I mean, these are good reasons as to why we need to be focusing on better undergraduate experience here at the U of A. And it all depends on what kind of, experience you want or what kind of Alberta that you want here, right? So, yeah, that's my answer to your question.
Thank you.
The answer to this question is elementary. Who here is an art student? Great, none of you. That's great, because we're going to take all the funding from arts and culture and anything to do with interpretive dance and put it into something more important, like agriculture, sciences, engineering. The arts have not brought anything good to this province or country. Celine Dion is okay. It's so easy. I can't believe anyone didn't think of this before. It's like, come on, people.
This question is addressed to Sadiq. One of your platform goals is to make education at the U of A more accessible and affordable for students. Can you be more specific, and can you give me 2 concrete examples of actions you plan to take?
I'd hate to say great question again, but good question. I think the approach really is twofold. But before I get to that approach, moving into tangible and concrete things that we can do, I'll refer to 2 concrete things that I've done this year in that area. The first one is making sure that the UPass, the price isn't exorbitant for students. I know that the price has increased substantially since it was first implemented, but a price of $170 was proposed, and we successfully negotiated that down over the course of 4 years, so that it goes up like in stages, basically. The second one is the SU Health and Dental Plan. We save students about $1 million by switching providers. We have seen some effects in terms of the drugs that are provided, but we've worked all that out with the University Health Center. In terms of the 2 strategies to use, I think is first, talking to university administrators. Once again, building those relationships. Often I think university administrators are focused in their research or focused in their teaching, and they forget a little bit about what the student experience is like. The second one is along the same lines, but making sure that the Board of Governors doesn't see the university as sort of a business, but sees it as an institution, sees it as a place of higher learning. And on top of all of that, obviously we need to use our provincial lobby group cause to make sure that the government cracks down hard on the university in that aspect. So I guess, sorry, that wasn't 2, that was 3 strategies. But we need to work all 3 of those angles to try to make sure that education is affordable for students.
All right. I have one more question for you.
Sure.
Most of your goals for increasing sustainability only pertain to sub, for example, the food court waste audit and the gender-neutral washrooms. How will you make the entire campus more sustainable beyond sub?
The SU needs to be a leader, basically. We need to start with sub, and we need to start somewhere. In terms of the food court waste audit, I would love to expand that to the Cab Cafe, to expand that to the Lister Cafe, to expand that to the various cafeterias that we have on campus. But we need to make sure that it is a project that we can undertake, and that we see tangible things that can come from this project, which is why we need to start with sub. In terms of gender-neutral washrooms, once again, we need to lead the way. The SU needs to be the leader in these things, because I think right now it's great to propose new and fresh ideas, but I think with a lot of things we're playing catch up. With the gender-neutral washrooms issues, with the queer issues, basically, as a whole, I think we're catching up to a lot of institutions, and as the flagship institution, or whatever we want to call the U of A, we should be leading the charge on all of these issues. But we need to start with sub and expand that to campus. We need to show the university that these are things that are viable, that we can do, and that the university can do just as well.
Thank you.
All right, this next question is directed at all 3 of you, and throughout the past year, there have been a lot of issues regarding transparency in the Students' Union. Can you each name 2 things that you will do to increase transparency?
So, in regards to what the Students' Union could do to make itself a lot more transparent, I think before I answer that question, it's important to preface that there are some issues that require confidentiality. And I think that students elect counselors to trust them with that confidentiality, and that's a trust. That's why individuals run for Students' Council, and that's why they're giving those powers to represent students, right? So I think it's important to realize that. However, with that being said, there are times and there are issues where we could be a lot more transparent. For instance, one is not necessarily going in camera when we don't need to, right? That could be one way to be a lot more of a transparent organization. Now, the second aspect of increasing transparency is something that we could look into, The idea has been thrown around of perhaps publishing past council minutes that were in council or something like that. I mean, there are ways I think we can look at, reanalyze Students' Council and see if there's any ways of improving it. Not necessarily endorsing that way, but I think a first step to increasing transparency is looking at how we can better Students' Council. And that's one of my major platform points, actually. And I think that's something that we could also bring up and talk about and consult with other stakeholders who do passionately care about that issue.
Sadiq.
The first thing that I'd like to see the SU and the SU Council and the SU executives look into is something that Amanda Henry is currently looking into, is seeing if and when we can develop a process where in-camera minutes can become public minutes. A process by which council can choose to make those minutes public. The second one really is making sure that councillors actually connect with their constituents. I think there is an element of transparency which is in camera sessions, but there is also the element of transparency where students just actually don't know what's going on. I think that makes us equally not transparent, and I think we need to connect SU counselors with their constituents much better. I know the emails haven't been working. I remember being an engineering counselor and waiting on a bunch of engineering emails, and they never came. People told me they sent them, and they just never got there.
I agree with Pedros quite a bit. The university should trust its students' union. Therefore, we should make it more opaque. We should build up walls in the students' union so they can't see what we're doing, because they should be trusting us. Like a mother trusts its son, daughter, adopted son, adopted daughter, or freak child. That is what we should be doing, people. The world is getting destroyed, and it's because we have a lack of trust. We need to trust each other in these times of need. Therefore, we don't need it to be transparent, because it's all about trust. See, nobody got my back there. That's not trust. We need trust. That's all.
Okay, this next question is addressed to all three of you, and I'd like to know your specific plans for actually pushing through fall reading week in your terms as president if you were elected. And you'll have 2 minutes to answer this, and we'll start with Sadiq.
I think the first thing we actually need to do in terms of getting fall reading week passed is making sure that it actually gets on the GFC exec agenda. I know that in this current GFC exec agenda, it was actually pulled off of the agenda, and that I think that's kind of snowballing a little bit. What we really need to do is we need to make sure that, obviously we need to consult with the deans like we've been doing. I think Colton and Rory have done a pretty good job of doing that. But we really need to do a good job of convincing them as a whole, as a group. And something else that we need to do in terms of fall reading week is not just talk about how many instructional days are being cut or added or whatever. I think we need to talk about fall reading week as a full package. When I first heard about fall reading week in Nick DeHaad's year, he talked about running academic programming during fall reading week. Making sure that students are well supported in their academia, making sure that students have the tools they need. And that currently does happen with Take Back the Term, but I think it would be better stretched over a full week. Potentially having student advisors come out and seeing what the student schedules would look like if they potentially drop a class. With the withdrawal deadline being moved back, I think it's a great opportunity for us to provide our students with a little bit more academic support. So we need to bring that full package to GFC exec, to the deanery, to Dean's Council, to whoever, and make sure that it passes.
So I think one of the main ways, there's three approaches I would take in terms of making sure that we get a fall reading week. First is that we continue to really advocate and meet with all the individual stakeholders who have a stake in this when it comes to fall reading week. So that includes deans, that includes other individuals within faculties and other members of the GFC executive as well. And I feel like that's an extremely important facet, and not necessarily just me to say hi, but to also go through the proposal itself and to make sure that the new proposal that we have on the table is something that they're currently interested in. And I know with some of the issues that we've been working on the Students' Union this year, it's made it kind of difficult for us to kind of balance both as well, and I think that's something that we need to be very conscious of. So the second issue as well is to also ensure that the fall reading week, when we sell it, is simply selling it more than just saying, well, you know, it helps students with mental health and et cetera, and it's good just to have a break. I think we need to be able, it would be great if we can provide some more programming as well and show them exactly how Fall Reading Week will truly benefit students. Our research department has done an excellent job in this, and I think this is something that we should continue to build on. And I think the third point as well is just establishing trust. It's something that I brought up before. When we're trying to sell university administrators whether we should have a Fall Reading Week or not, it's kind of have that trust when we're kind of in the midst of a judicial review, right? So I think that's something that we need to be frank and, you know, address the elephant in the room and be able to try and work and resolve these issues so we can kind of get other things going on at the same time.
I kind of agree with the junior high way of doing things. One spring break is better than two. We don't need to have another reading week. I have some friends from McGill and they're huge a-holes. We don't need it. We don't need another time to rest from a month of just having summer. We don't need a second chance. Come on, everybody. Is everyone with me on this case? That we don't need another reading week? Shocked. I'm shocked and appalled.
Because there's no trust.
What about trust? Say something to me.
All right, this is our final question for you guys. One major platform point for a lot of candidates throughout the years has revolved around tuition and not allowing fee increases to happen. Give one specific example on how you actually intend to lower tuition. Sadiq, you can start.
Well, I don't necessarily think it's about lowering tuition, to first go to that point of your question. I think it's more about making sure that tuition doesn't keep going up. So it's not necessarily about lowering it, but about making sure that things don't continue to rise. And you said for one sort of concrete thing that we can do. And I think obviously we can talk to the administrators and the board, but I think something that really stood out to me, something that Premier Redford said in her conversation with Premier Redford earlier this week, is that she said very clearly and very plainly, tuition will not go up. And making sure that we hold her accountable to what she has said to us. I'm an Alberta resident. I have voted. I feel like she should be held accountable for what she has said to us. She said that tuition will be going up, that it won't also be going on the backs of municipalities. So we need to make sure that we hold her and her government accountable through cause, but also just generally through ourselves and making sure that we do that.
Cool. I'm glad that you brought up this issue because this is the stuff that I directly deal with in my portfolio. So in regards to, you know, what can we do to ensure that we lower tuition or et cetera, well, you know, that's kind of a trick question because tuition is capped by CPI. So actually, tuition will unfortunately be going up. It's provincial law. But the greater issue is not about tuition, it's about fees. It's about the mandatory non-instructional fees where students don't actually have approval. And that's the issue that we need to currently be working on. Because the second that, you know, the levy breaks on this issue, where the universities can get away with having backdoor tuition increases, I think that's very problematic. And what happened in 2009 is when the provincial government gave the university 0% budget increases, that's when we saw these fees. And what are we hearing now? The university might be getting 0% budget increases. So it's important that we have a president next year who's going to be extremely strong and work with the future vice president external to make sure that we're strong advocates of the provincial government that tuition, well, fees, actually, I can nearly trick myself, fees remain to be, you know, approved by students. And furthermore, I think another issue to add on to that is we also need to be focusing about having needs-based grants and increasing accessibility from specific demographics as well. So I'll save that for another time.
Horace?
Before my father was incinerated in a glue separation machine, he had one promise and that he would always work for fair trade. So the simple way to bring down student fees is horse trading. You simply do something for somebody and then they give you free tuition. Perhaps, you see, my father, he built a cabinet for his teacher to pass grade 11. We make students build cabinets for free tuition. It's this or that. It doesn't even have to be just cabinets. You could, say, go to Indira's house and do some landscaping, and she'll give you free tuition. And I've been talking to some of the people up there, not heaven, Indira's places. We're talking about some people just up there, and they said they would be down for some horse trading for free tuition. And I demanded, by God, that every student will get free tuition by simply doing menial tasks.
All right, I actually have one follow-up for you guys on that, and this will be just to Sadiq and Petros. With faculties like the Faculty of Arts really suffering under budget cutbacks that the university's experienced, why do you guys think it's completely intangible for the Students' Union to allow tuition to go up beyond CPI or mandatory non-instructional fees? We'll start with Sadiq.
I think April with all the tough questions. Basically, I think what we really need to look at is, I think a lot of faculty associations are thinking about this. I think with the ESS potentially and the LSA looking at sort of being behind some mandatory non-instructional fees or things like that, or market modifiers. It's something we definitely need to take a very serious look at. But I think one thing that's important to remember is that it's not just about the faculty of education and the staff, it's about our students. Making sure that our students don't have to work 60 or 80 hours a week during the summer just to try to make their tuition for a year. That's not really acceptable, especially with the fact that STEP could potentially be eliminated. We really need to take a really hard look at what our students and what our students really want. And I say that because I think faculty associations sometimes have a different opinion with the SU executives. And so I think we need to build a good consensus with them and talk to them about what they need and what we can do for them. So I think it's different for every faculty, but yeah.
This may sound like a rather controversial statement, and that's probably not the smartest thing to do when you're doing campaigns. But I guess I'll kind of pose a question back to you: is why should we be paying more for less, right? Since the early 1990s, tuition has gone up approximately 300%. We've seen textbooks gone up by 150%. We've seen job prospects for students with degree holders being significantly less. We're seeing the wages for those who have degrees not increasing as fast as it used to be, right? And we're saying, oh, by the way, we should also consider increasing tuition, besides the fact that the student-faculty ratio hasn't increased, right? So when we look at one of the main indicators for a quality education still getting worse, and to say, well, we should consider paying for more, it doesn't make sense. And that's one of the main reasons, right? So when we look at these other faculties, like Faculty of Arts and et cetera, they're the ones who play crucial roles in the economy, and they're the ones who, makes it a crucial economy as well. So, when someone says, well, we should be paying more for, we're having a struggling faculty, well, I say, figure your shit out, right? In my personal opinion, because it doesn't make sense as to why we should be paying more for less.
Thank you. We will now move into 10 minutes in which each candidate will have the opportunity to ask one opponent one question. Candidates are encouraged to be as ruthless as possible with their questions.
Oh.
And Sadiq, we're going to start with you.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
One of the things that Petros has been talking about in his campaign platform, one of the things that's on his posters, one of the things that's been plastered everywhere, is to talk about block weeks, to talk about how successful it's been at the U of C and how successful it is at other institutions. I'll try to keep this as brief as possible, but A, does that mean necessarily that block weeks are good for us? B, does Petros value student engagement, as if he thinks block weeks will reduce the amount of time that students are actually in university? Does he actually value the fact that if students are here longer, we can engage them for a longer period of time or have a greater opportunity to engage students? The third thing is, what would be charged for tuition for these block weeks? And the last thing is, I've been talking to a lot of profs about this, but who would teach these block weeks? Has Petros talked to any professors, any staff about having these block weeks, and who would teach them? I guess one more question to add on to that is that, does Petros want to have the block weeks at the beginning of the semester, which is normally when the U of C has them, and cut back on students' time in the summer, or does he want them to cut back their time in the winter for their Christmas break? Sorry, that was a lot of questions put into one, but it all has to do with block weeks.
Since I got 5 questions in one, does that mean I have a longer response time? Okay, great. So yeah, those are really excellent questions, and I'm super stoked to answer them. So first is, I'll start off with the student engagement part. Petros, by trying to encourage students to graduate quicker, are you going to be decreasing student engagement? It's actually the complete opposite. And the reason why is by, let's say, enabling a student to, let's say, take 4 courses in the regular semester and giving them a chance to take 1 course for 1 week right before that semester, you're giving them a lot more for your time to actually engage in more opportunities, to actually give back to their community, right? So as a student myself, I don't know about you guys, but I have a hard as hell time trying to balance volunteer, trying to balance getting engaged and working if I'm taking 5 courses. So what Sadiq actually says, it does the complete opposite. It actually encourages engagement. So the third point is in regards to tuition. What's the tuition like? Well, at the U of C, it's the exact same cost. So that's already answered. In regards to professors, what are the thoughts of professors who would pay for it? Actually, this would make the university more money. So let me do some quick, simple arithmetic. So at the University of Calgary, they offer nearly 100 block courses this year. And let's assume that there's 30 students per course. And let's say we assume that they're paying $500 each for that course. So that's $15,000 worth of revenue. Now, if we look at the average per week salary of the Alberta professor here, that's approximately $2,400 per week. Now, you could pay a professor an extra $4,000 per week, and you'll still be making $11,000 profit on each course, right? Multiply that by 100, the university is making over $1 million, right? So, I mean, in regards to professors, you can be finding professors who are willing to teach this course, who are willing to get an extra amount of pay. Right, and I think that's reasonable, and you can also work with TAs. In regards to the beginning of the semester or end, I mean, these are the kind of things that we do research into. It's like, we're cutting back at the Christmas break, we're cutting back in the summertime. To be frank with you, it's the student's choice if they think that's the best decision for them, right? Would I want to maybe, end my summer a little bit early so I have to spend 3 weeks actually doing a spring and summer course? Yes, right? And that gives students a chance to at least work throughout the entire 4 months, rather than, let's say, try and find a job for 2 months and a half and et cetera, because I faced great difficulty in doing that, and I know other students did. And in regards to, is it good for us? Well, yeah, you know what? If it's good for our colleagues at the University of Calgary, which is a 3-hour drive away, it's good for us as well.
Thank you. And it's your turn now to ask a question.
Okay, so Sadiq, my question is in regards to accessibility and affordability. Now, you seem to use those 2 terms interchangeably, so I'm wondering if you can clearly define what those 2 terms mean, and with each term, how you would address, accessibility issues, and with each term, how you would address affordability issues in regards to the provincial government, not UPass and et cetera. And the other point you could bring up is how advocating to the Board of Governors would actually reduce tuition if they're the ones who are actually trying to ask the government to increase it as well.
I think one huge fault in Petros's question, I guess, is the fact that the UPass actually is a mandatory non-instructional fee. It is. And so we need to make sure that we are keeping the ones that we approve by referendum as low as possible. Now, in terms of defining accessibility and affordability, I think those are 2 different terms, but they can be used together. In terms of accessibility, we need to make sure that students, high school students or returning students, can actually access or can actually come to the University of Alberta and not be burdened with tuition and other fees. In terms of affordability, I think it almost speaks to the same thing, but making sure that classes and things like that are affordable and that If we have a course for a week, maybe we're not charging a full amount of tuition for that. That seems a little bit ridiculous for a 13-week expenditure to be reduced to 1 week and having that the same charge for potentially less instructional time. So in terms of what we can actually do and in terms of why the Board of Governors is one of the keys in this area is because the Board of Governors does approve or does recommend to the province to approve these tuition increases. And so we need to make sure that we act at every level of governance to make sure that we try and advocate for the students in this issue. The Board of Governors sees the university as a business, not as an academy. We need to make sure that they see the human side of things. We need to humanize the university for the Board of Governors because currently they don't see that side and we need to do a much better job of doing that. We need to show them that this is about the student experience, that this is about student life. It's not just about how much money we're making in a $1.7 billion budget. We need to show them that, and we need to show the province that as well. I think many MLAs are starting to respond very positively to that. I think, for example, Thomas Lukazik, our Deputy Premier, as well as our new Minister, has responded very positively to that. The Premier has responded very positively to that. And so we need to make sure that we follow up with those things. I think that Adam Woods has done a great job of connecting with those people through Ignite and through the fact that Alison Redford was on our campus. And we need to make sure the next SU president needs to make sure that he is well supported and that we can tag team and do a good job of making sure that we're holding the government accountable for what they've said they would do.
Thank you. Horse with a gun, do you have a question you want to ask?
What do you think about the horrible internet situation at the university? What will you do to strengthen the Ethernet?
Who are you addressing this question to?
Both fine fellows. You're both dressed very nicely. I like your cardigan.
All right, we only have time for one of you to answer, so whichever one of you wants to answer.
I'll answer this.
Lizard Spock, rock, paper, scissors, lizard Spock. Do you want to answer both together?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, whatever. I guess in regards to how we're going to improve the internet here on campus, that's a good question. One of the things that rattles me the most is how horrible the Wi-Fi is in Hub. I don't completely understand that issue, so I just wanted to give shout-outs to say, yo, I understand that's an issue. We need to get it done. Let's fix it. Let's go.
All right, well, that concludes our forum then. Thanks everyone for attending. Thank you guys for being here.